You did nothing wrong. You know that. You have replayed it a dozen times. You checked. You were fine. And yet there it is, that hollow, creeping feeling sitting somewhere between your chest and your stomach, telling you that somehow, some way, you are guilty. You didn't steal anything. You didn't hurt anyone. But your body doesn't care. It has already decided. And the strangest part is that this feeling, this irrational, maddening guilt that shows up when you have done absolutely nothing, is not a flaw in your design. It is the design. To understand why, you have to go back. Not decades, not centuries, hundreds of thousands of years, to a version of you that lived and died inside a group of roughly 50 to 150 people. That group was everything. It was food, protection, warmth, survival. Lose the group and you were dead. Not metaphorically, literally dead. In that world, social harmony wasn't a preference, it was oxygen. And so your brain evolved an early warning system, a threat detector aimed not outward at predators, but inward at yourself. It was constantly scanning. Did you take too much? Did you say something wrong? Does someone in the group seem distant today? Is someone angry? Are you the reason? Psychologist June Price Tangney, who has spent decades studying guilt and shame, describes guilt as fundamentally a social emotion. It exists not to punish you, but to regulate you, to keep you aligned with the group, to make you course correct before the group decides you are a problem. The key word there is before. Your brain doesn't wait for evidence. It doesn't hold a trial. It fires guilt preemptively, as a signal that a social threat might be forming, even if no actual threat exists. This is the same logic your startle reflex uses. You flinch before you know what the sound was. You feel guilty before you know if you actually did something. This is what researchers call anticipatory guilt, and your ancestors, who had more of it, survived longer. They kept the peace. They over-apologized. They smoothed things over before conflicts could escalate into something dangerous. The ones who felt nothing, who walked through life completely unbothered by the social temperature of those around them, they got expelled, or worse. So your brain learned to err on the side of guilt. Now fast forward to today. You are sitting at your desk. A friend sends a short reply. One word, no emoji. You read it 3 times. Something shifts in your chest. You start reviewing the last week of your conversations, searching for what you might have done. You haven't done anything. But your ancient threat detector doesn't know that. It just knows that the social signal felt different, and it is doing what it was built to do, making you feel responsible. This is not anxiety exactly. It is guilt without a cause, and it has a name. Psychologists call it neurotic guilt, or sometimes free-floating guilt, a sense of wrongdoing that is completely disconnected from any actual wrongdoing. Researcher Brené Brown, whose work on vulnerability and shame has reached millions of people, draws a sharp line between guilt and shame. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. But neurotic guilt is something stranger still. It says, I must have done something bad, even if I cannot find it yet. And your brain will look. It will look hard. This is a cognitive pattern sometimes called the search for the crime. When the feeling arrives without an obvious cause, the mind begins constructing one. It excavates old memories. It reframes neutral interactions as slights you caused. It turns a forgotten text message into evidence of your neglect. It is not lying to you, exactly. It is doing its job, matching the emotion to a cause so the system makes sense. But the cause it finds is almost always old, almost always borrowed. almost always something you were taught to feel guilty about long before your brain was fully formed. Because guilt doesn't start in adulthood. It starts in childhood, inside the first group you ever belonged to, your family. Developmental psychologist Martin Hoffman, who studied empathy and moral development for over 40 years, found that children begin experiencing guilt as early as 2 years old. Not because they understand moral codes, but because they are deeply attuned to the emotional state of their caregivers. When a parent is upset, the child feels responsible, even if they are not, especially if they are not. That early wiring runs deep. If you grew up in a household where keeping the peace meant shrinking yourself, where conflict was dangerous, where someone else's bad mood became your emergency, your threat detector was calibrated to an extremely sensitive setting. You learned that other people's feelings were your responsibility. You learned that if someone was unhappy, the fastest path to safety was to assume it was your fault and fix it. That program doesn't uninstall when you turn 18. It runs in the background for the rest of your life. And so today, when a colleague seems quieter than usual, or when someone takes too long to respond to your message, or when a room goes slightly awkward for a moment, your system doesn't just notice, it activates. The old pattern says, someone is unhappy, find the crime, fix it before the group turns on you. The problem is that the group you're in now is not 50 people in a savanna. It is a city of millions. It is an inbox. It is a comment section. It is a family text thread that's been quiet for 3 days. The triggers are everywhere. The ancient system is overwhelmed. There is also another layer, something researchers have identified as vicarious guilt, sometimes called collective guilt. In 1997, psychologists Bertram Mal and Joshua Kenobi published work exploring how people assign responsibility, and what emerged from decades of follow-up research is striking. Humans regularly feel guilty for things done by their group, their family, even strangers who share their identity. You feel a wash of guilt when someone of your nationality does something terrible on the news. You feel a flicker of it when a family member behaves badly at dinner, even though you said nothing. You feel it when your company makes a decision you had no part in. Your brain has extended the logic of group harmony so far that it has made you personally responsible for everyone in your tribe. And in the modern world, your tribe is enormous and constantly broadcasting its failures directly into your hands. So you carry it, a diffuse, ambient guilt that has no clear source and no clear resolution. Here's what's important to understand. The feeling is real. The signal is real. But the signal has false positives. Many, many false positives. When guilt is tied to an actual action, something you said, something you did, something you chose, it is extraordinarily useful. It is one of the most powerful moral regulators humans have. It makes you repair. It makes you grow. Without it, you would be dangerous. But when guilt arrives without a cause, or in response to things entirely outside your control, it is the same system misfiring. It is a fire alarm going off in an empty building. The wiring is correct. The fire is not there. The research suggests that the most useful thing you can do in those moments is not to search for the crime. That is what the old system wants you to do. Instead, name what is happening. Psychologists call this labeling affect. Simply identifying the emotion as it is occurring appears to reduce the intensity of the signal. You are not guilty. You are experiencing guilt. Small difference. Massive effect. Then ask one question. Did I actually do something harmful? Not, could someone possibly interpret my behavior negatively? Not, is there any conceivable way I might have contributed? Did you do something harmful? If the honest answer is no, the signal is a false positive. You can acknowledge it, let it run its course, and not let it send you into a spiral of self-excavation. Your ancestors needed a system so sensitive it would catch every possible social threat before it became fatal. You are the descendant of the ones who were most attuned, most vigilant, most willing to feel bad about nothing just in case it turned out to be something. That vigilance kept them alive. It built civilizations. It wove humans into communities. It is the quiet engine behind empathy, cooperation, and everything that makes human society function. But you are not standing on a savanna. The group cannot exile you for taking too long to reply. The cold text message is probably just someone having a bad day. So the next time that hollow feeling settles in your chest, the one that shows up before you've done a single thing wrong, you can know exactly what it is. It is hundreds of thousands of years of evolution doing its job perfectly in a world that no longer